I think I'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session. My name's Ron Kander. I'll be talking to you in a minute here, but welcome to this new session. It's called Grow Local, Process Local, Buy Local, Building Our Supply Chains. And at the Pennsylvania Hemp Summit, of course. So thank you for coming. Just to give you an idea of how things are going to go, there's 4 speakers, including myself. We'll each give about 10 minutes of time to sort of describe what we do and our thoughts. And during that time, if you'd please keep your microphones muted, it would prevent feedback and things like that. Since this is a Zoom session and not a webinar, we would be able to hear your mics. And then once we get through those presentations, which will take about half our time, we'll open it up for questions and discussion. The best way and most efficient way for you to get questions in would be to use the chat button at the bottom of the screen. We'll have the chat window open. As the speakers talk, I'll collect up the questions, and then I'll sort of play point guard and read the question out and identify the person on the panel to talk about it. So if you have a person you want to specifically ask, put that in your question, so I'll know to direct it to one of our speakers. Or if it's a general question, I'll direct it to the whole panel. So that's kind of our logistics. So thank you again for joining. Let me go to the next slide here and start the process of introducing myself and the others, and then I'll introduce the other speakers as they come on. My name is Ron Kander. I'm Dean of the Kander College of Design, Engineering, and Commerce at Thomas Jefferson University. I'm also the Associate Provost for Applied Research at Jefferson. I'm a professor in the engineering program here. I teach and do research in areas like material selection, materials processing, materials characterization, and systems modeling. Before I came to Jefferson in Philadelphia, I taught in Virginia at Virginia Tech and at James Madison University there. And before that, I was a engineer at DuPont in Wilmington, Delaware, in advanced composites and polymer physics. So my areas are in composite materials and materials characterization. My recent work, however, has been on an integrated study of the material science, processing, product design, supply chain economics, and sustainability of consumer products and industrial products made from hemp-derived materials. I'm a member of the Altogether Now PA Hemp Coalition, and I also chair the PA Department of Agriculture's Industrial Hemp Steering Committee. My degrees are all in chemical engineering, my bachelor's from Carnegie Mellon, and my PhD from University of Delaware. So that's just a little bit about me, so you'll know who your moderator is. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how at Jefferson we're looking at sort of hemp as a system and how industrial applications sort of are systematized. So I'll walk you through that real quick, and I think that'll set up our other speakers very nicely. So we have sort of what I call a tripartite research approach. Let me move myself up a little bit to get away from the bottom there. And we're trying to look at the material science and engineering of hemp. We're trying to look at product design and development for hemp. And we're also trying to look at the sustainability and the supply chain economics of hemp. So let me just show you one slide on each of those. I'm going to keep this rather short. So the materials. What we're basically doing is taking hemp fiber and hemp hurd and looking at how you can combine that with various different biopolymers or biodegradable polymers or polymers based on biological materials. And then using a host of existing engineering processes. And I think that's key. We're trying to look at things that exist and are scalable so that it would be relatively easy to combine them and then scale them for processes to transform hemp into a form that's easy to use in industry for a bunch of different applications. While that's going on with our engineers and scientists, sort of on the other side of the fence, I have our product design and product development faculty and students in places like industrial design, looking at how you would design products to exploit the products of hemp, the properties of hemp. So they go through their normal exercise of looking at users, figuring out what users need and want, how big markets are, and they can come back to us and say, if we had a material form that had a certain set of properties, we would be able to exploit a certain application to make a product. So that's going on. And then the third element is bringing in our MBA students and our business faculty and saying, that's great, but if we have a material on this end and a product on this end, is there an economic and reasonable supply chain connection that would let you go from that material to that product? And does it make any sense from a technical point of view, from an economic point of view, et cetera? So to do that, we actually have a couple really interesting projects going on right now. We have a PhD student who's building a model, a system dynamics model in a software package called Stella. And this is just a snapshot of some of her work. And she's building what I'd call a technical supply chain. So she's looking at how material flows through all of the processes, from decortication to separation, to fibers, to greens, to herd, and trying to watch the material flow and the process flow and be able to model that. And then this model would be something we could give to somebody who wants to start a business, and they could put in their own numbers and see what the flows are going to look like. And then to combine with that, we have another student, an MBA student, who's trying to do the same thing with the same model, but now he's looking at the flow of money rather than the flow of material. So he's looking at the economics. So you have a bank account, he can look at fixed costs, variable costs, revenue from sales, and try to model the numbers coming out of the first model could be feeds into this model to see if the economics are sustainable. So those are the two we're actually doing right now. The third element, which we haven't started yet, but will be coming probably in the spring of this year or the summer, would be to then layer in a life cycle assessment that says, now that we have a process, what are the energy, water, and raw material inputs to that process? And what are the outputs from products, but also waste, water, airborne waste, solid waste, other environmental releases? And how do those then layer into your decision about the technical and economic sustainability of the process? So you can see how those kind of fit together. This is kind of where we want to go. So the orange block, the square or circle, don't know my geometry. The orange circle is the technical model I showed you. The green circle is the economic model that I showed you. And those are the two we're working on. The blue would be the life cycle assessment model. And then the goal is to add a fourth element to this sustainability, and that is the social sustainability component, where we look at human rights, protection of human health and safety, increased access to social good, enhanced social economic prosperity. And that social model then would link in with the technical, economic, and environmental model to sort of look at all four dimensions of sustainability of this industry. And I feel very strongly that that whole thing is supported in the background by the concept of local supply chains, especially in this industry. And I think that the local hemp supply chains are the natural way to solve all four of these sustainability issues, and they can be addressed, they can help address all four simultaneously. So that's sort of the goal of what we're trying to accomplish in our research projects here at Jefferson. And that's why I feel like this session on local supply chains is so informative to this whole process. So we're trying to be sort of a support system. How I'm trying to get this information out is sort of a few ways. As I mentioned, I'm a member of the Altogether Now PA Hemp group, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. I'm also chairing the PA Hemp Steering Committee. That's a committee that is around to help advance hemp industry in Pennsylvania and provide counsel to the PA Department of Agriculture on this industry specifically. We have 4 subcommittees. You can see them there: farmer and processor education and outreach, supply chain and market development, research opportunities and need, and policy and regulation. So that's a great group to sort of use to connect the community to the Department of Ag and vice versa. We're trying to be a communication conduit for that conversation. So this was a 10-minute whirlwind version of what we do. The point was not to give you the details today. I did put at the bottom, though, a YouTube video that the university has a video cast called SpecterCast, and I was interviewed about 2 weeks ago on hemp. So if you Google SpecterCast hemp hype, you'll find that video, and it's about a 40-minute conversation where I was interviewed. So it goes a little bit more into detail than today's talk. I also put it in the electronic business card for this conference. So if you go connect to my business card, you'll have the link to the video there too. So that'll give you a little more information about what we do. But I don't want to dominate the conversation, so I'm going to stop there and introduce the first of the three members of our panel. The first speaker that you'll be hearing from, I don't have to float in the air here, I can come down. There we go. The first speaker that you're going to hear from is Judy Wicks. And many of you know Judy. She's the founder and executive director of Altogether Now PA. The mission of that organization is to unite urban and rural communities in building resilient, self-reliant regional economies. Judy's pretty busy. She also runs the Circle of Aunts and Uncles, which is a microloan fund for local entrepreneurs without access to family and friends money. She also founded, that was founded in 2015. Judy's also the founder of Sustainable Business Network of Greater Philadelphia in 2001, and co-founder of Business Alliance for Local Living Economies, which is now called Common Future. In '83, she founded the White Dog Cafe. That's how many of you will know her name. That was a pioneer in local food movement, and she ran that until 2010. She's the author of Good Morning, Beautiful Businesses, which was published in 2013, and that actually won a national gold medal for business leadership, and it's been translated into Chinese and Korean. She's gotten many awards locally and nationally, things like Impact Award for Economic Justice from the Social Venture Network, Women Chefs and Restaurateurs Lifetime Achievement Award, James Beard Foundation Humanitarian of the Year Award, just to name a few. So I won't go on, but I will now pass it over to Judy and let her tell you a little bit about her thoughts on this subject. So I will unshare. All yours, Judy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very delighted to be here with you all today to talk about our organization, Altogether Now Pennsylvania. Just by coincidence, everyone on this panel is affiliated in some way. As Dr. Kander mentioned, he's on our Hemp Coalition, as well as Eric Titus White, and Peggy Fogarty is on our advisory committee. So it's fun to all be together here today. This all began starting our hemp coalition, industrial hemp coalition within Altogether Now, because we were concerned with this new industry that it benefit our farmers and our entrepreneurs and not be a green gold rush for large corporations. So I'll tell you a little bit more about our work now, if I can do my screen share here. And play from start. There we go. All right. So as Dr. Kander mentioned, our mission is to unite urban and rural communities to build regional economies that work for all of us. So the basic idea is to be self-reliant in our basic needs, to have programs to increase equity and prosperity for our marginalized communities, in the rural and urban areas, to have restorative agricultural practices, to reduce our carbons by reducing long distance shipping, and to build community resilience in the face of climate change. So producing our basic needs locally, when I was looking at them, hemp, I wrote hemp, because hemp is such a miracle crop that it can produce all our basic needs, whether it's food and medicine, building materials, clothing, and energy. But just to give you a little overview of Altogether Now, we have 4 coalitions and 3 community advisory groups. In the food and medicine area, we have the Pennsylvania Grain Coalition and the Plant Medicine Coalition. In building materials, industrial hemp with our hempcrete work. We have a clothing and textile coalition. And then our advisory groups are in renewable energy and zero waste. And they advise in all the areas. So importantly, we're moving power and wealth and opportunity from these distant corporations into our communities. So since industrialization, corporations have been extracting wealth from our communities, and we're trying to reverse this by producing our basic needs locally. And there's urgency to this. So, you know, these long distance supply chains that have been our way of obtaining basic needs, whether it's food, energy, clothing, or whatever, are based on long distance shipping. And these long distance shipping routes are going to become more and more vulnerable to chaotic weather and social upheaval. So we believe that what we're doing today to build resilient, self-reliant local economies will determine the survival, the very survival of future generations. So also, interestingly enough, especially after this last very divisive election, I believe that local self-reliance, community self-reliance is the common ground of the left and the right. That the right has long cherished individual self-reliance, the left more communal efforts, and you blend the two together and you've got community self-reliance. And when we work on our local supply chains in food, fiber, and fuel together, this is a way of really stitching back together again our country that was really disrupted. Our local economies were disrupted by globalization, and our local supply chains were severed by globalization. And there was a time when local economies were co-created by urban and rural communities that had respect and trust in each other. And so we're working to restore that respect and trust through local supply chains, as well as restoring prosperity. So this is the beginning really of our Industrial Hemp Coalition. You know, on your far left, Cameron McIntosh is currently the leader of our coalition. The third one in is Eric Titus White, who you'll hear from soon. And there's Ashley Walsh, owner of Pocono Organics. This meeting of our coalition was at Pocono Organics, and then Dr. Kander next to Ashley. So we go around with our meetings for our hemp coalition to the various farms. We've been to Dr. Kander's Jefferson University to learn there, and so on. And through this work, we've developed partnerships between each other. People help each other with their harvest. They share ideas. They partner on businesses, buy and sell from each other, and so on. Our plant medicine coalition also includes a hemp product, CBD. So there's three parts to our plant medicine coalition: CBD, THC, and traditional herbalists. And this is a gathering of the plant medicine coalition at Barefoot Botanicals, where we divided into those three groups. One group, the traditional herbs, ginseng and golden seal and so on. And then the other group in CBD and the other group in THC. And our THC group is really focusing on the adult use bill to make it equitable to communities that have suffered from the war on drugs. So the mission of all of our coalitions is first to build our local supply chains to increase the supply, to educate the public to increase the demand. So it's really these two almost equal buckets of increasing supply and increasing demand, connecting to capital, increasing diversity and inclusion, building a community of shared values, and I'll talk about that more in a minute, and advocating for legislation along with our partners, such as the Sustainable Business Network. So one of the things we realize is that we have to create markets for locally grown hemp. And hempcrete is one of those end-use products that is on the forefront of our work. And most of you know about hempcrete, and I think my colleague Eric will be talking more about hempcrete, so I don't want to go into that too much. So I'll leave that to Eric. So here's our hempcrete work that we've been doing it all together now, PA, Hempcrete Week. And again, Eric will tell you more about that. And coming up, there's a project in Western Pennsylvania. Our work is now mostly on the eastern half of the state, but we also have members on the western part. And Amerishoff, owned by Cameron McIntosh, is partnering with another ATN member, Dawn Services, to build a hemp house in Western PA. The project I'm most excited about, because it's so exemplary of what we're trying to do, is a project that Cameron McIntosh is heading. And this is an affordable housing project with a Black-owned developer in North Philadelphia to manufacture precast modular panels for affordable housing in the same neighborhood. And this project is just in the imagination stage, but we have the pieces put together, and we hope this will happen because it's a perfect example of what we're trying to do, to connect and benefit the farmers connect and benefit the urban communities, not only with jobs, but also with a wonderful eco-friendly product to use in their homes. It's a way hempcrete can really unite rural and urban communities. This is a picture from our Hempcrete Week. And it's also an opportunity, for workforce development and job creation in the inner city. So at the foundation of our work is a revolution of values. And this is what Dr. King called for back in the 60s, that we have to move from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. And so that's what we're trying to do with our coalitions. This was a retreat of our steering committee for the Industrial Hemp Coalition, where we wrote a code of conduct. And this is really the foundation of our work, because we don't want to have business as usual. We want to build a new economy. And so this is what we have in mind, to build a caring economy where each of us, whether we're buying, selling, investing, when we make an economic decision, it's not to maximize profits and individual wealth, but to maximize the health and well-being of our communities and our ecosystems while receiving a fair return. And so if we don't do this, if we don't make this this change, we're not going to survive as a planet, basically. So we're really moving from a me to we mentality. Americans are known for our individualism, and we really have to move from an individualistic worldview to one of community, to make decisions for the benefit of our community, that we're not going to survive without community. And move from competition to cooperation, and from hoarding to sharing. This is what we need to do to build a caring economy. And overall, we need to lead with love. A love for the land, a love for our communities, love for our planet, and all the species who live here with us. So I hope you'll consider joining our community, whether you're a hemp farmer or a hemp entrepreneur or a local government official. Here's our website, altogetherNowPA.org. You can go to our section on industrial hemp and sign up right there on the website to be a member and hear more about our work. Thank you very much for your attention.
I really appreciate that, Judy. Thank you so much. That was a really great presentation. And I just want to remind our audience that please feel free to put your questions in the chat for Judy. And after Eric and Peggy have had a chance to present, we will be talking through that also, and talking through the questions also at that point. So let me move on. And our second speaker will be Eric Titus White. And Eric is an avid outdoorsman. He's, in his own words, a regretful believer in climate change. He's a second-year regenerative organic farmer and a carbon-conscious entrepreneur. He's been a 30-year resident of East Stroudsville, PA, and he spent about 10 years operating contracting companies in Europe and the Middle East, though, in the process over the last 10 years. He's currently, his international work supports the U.S. government on their demining efforts in Iraq. Locally, he has a 45-acre produce farm, hemp cultivation, and a bed and breakfast where he did a Hempcrete remodel. Eric hosted Hempcrete Week with Amira Chaudhry, and I always say that wrong, so I apologize. And Altogether Now PA at his farm, the Hempstead, in 2020. And it's a showcase for end-use products for fiber hemp. And he's currently launching Trilogy, which is a plant-based milk made from hemp, flax, and oats, and a hemp eco village on his property. So Eric has got a lot of free time, apparently. So he's doing a million things at one time. Hemp, in his words, is a gateway crop for Eric. It opens his eyes to the many joys of farming. His goal is to raise awareness for regenerative farming and jumpstart the fiber hemp industry in Pennsylvania, a man after my own heart, by creating more and more uses for hemp. So we're really eager to hear Eric's point of view on this. So Eric, I will stop sharing and pass things on to you.
Great. How you doing? I'm Eric. That was a great intro. Appreciate it, Ron. I am really honored to be on such a great panel with Judy and Peggy and Ron Kander, good people, people I know well, and I'm looking forward to working with more in the future. Um, I am I'm sitting right now at the Hempstead, and what you see behind me here is hempcrete, and that is all worked through our walls, installed by Cameron and a bunch of people during our Hempcrete Week event here at the Hempstead in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. Um, the hempcrete behind me is just raw hemp that we use as an insulation, and this hemp is yet to be plastered, so you can still actually see the fiber, the hurd in there. So I'll get started on my presentation. What I'm focused on today is really just trying to explain my journey and how I, came from this area, the Delaware Water Gap area, and moved all around the country. Started a business overseas, worked in the Middle East for quite a while. Ended up finding my family via Ancestry.com, and found out that, whether I knew it or not, we were a hemp cannabis family, and we were really deeply involved in the community across the country. So I'll start my presentation here. I'll share my screen, see if we're looking good. You let me know. All good? All right.
Yes.
All right, excellent. So that's me, owner of the 45-acre regenerative organic farm in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. We just got certified organic this year. We're looking to do the regenerative certification in the summer. I'm developing a hempcrete eco village and a farmer's market on our other property on the Delaware River right now. Also launching Trilogy, a plant-based milk with hemp, flax, and oats. And we talked about Hempcrete Week a little bit. We had over 100 people come to my farm over a week in Pennsylvania and get their hands dirty with some hemp and learn the ins and outs of building with this incredible plant. This was my kind of foray into hemp farming here. I didn't know how far this operation was going to take me, but started out with CBD. This is a view of my farm here from the Delaware Water Gap. That's the Delaware Water Gap in the background. That's my great dog, Margot. We'll get to, so how I got from Iraq to being a farmer. In 2018, I was living in Washington, D.C., traveling back and forth to Iraq for work. Did Ancestry.com, found out that my biological father actually lived in New Mexico and owned a large cannabis company. And I had a brother who was also an owner of that same company. I was really looking for ways to get out of Iraq and back home, and hemp seemed like the logical way to do it. I'm not sure it was so logical, but it got me here, and it's been incredible. So I went searching for property in my hometown, and I found a farm that had never been touched with chemicals. It was a bee farm, an organic produce farm. So I purchased it was called Mountaindale Farm. We changed it to the Hempstead at Mountaindale Farm. I started growing 5 acres of CBD hemp just as a test, using all of the tips that I had heard on great podcasts like the Lancaster Farming Hemp podcast and Shaping Fire and a bunch of other podcasts that I was just really trying to, soak up the info, and talking with my dad and brother and how they grew their cannabis. I was listening to the Lancaster Farming podcast, and I heard Judy Wicks speaking, and I reached out to her right away, and we ended up meeting for her PA Hemp Coalition meeting at Rodale Institute. I was halfway through my first hemp crop and met this incredible community of people, and really started kind of diving in. I was loving the people that I was meeting, and that was the thing that I have to stress the most, was I felt like I found my place. Not only did I find my place and I found my tribe, but I found something that I loved, which was, working in in farming and working with plants. While farming CBD hemp, I was hearing that there was a glut of CBD and that there was probably going to be some type of a crash, but I didn't want that to, slow me down. And talking with a lot of the people in the hemp coalition about what we thought was going to happen and the potentials for a crash in the CBD market, or a glut of CBD hemp, I switched to grow fiber hemp for 2020. So this year I grew fiber hemp. And I also diversified into field crops and produce and livestock, and started planning to renovate my farmhouse, which is a 1700s log cabin. And at one point in the 1930s, it was a boarding house. And I was working with the Hemp Coalition people, and met Cameron, and I said, listen, man, I want to use hemp in this house. I want to, bring what we grow in the field into the home so people can, understand how incredible this plant is. Also, it created an end product for a crop that I was growing here on the farm. We renovated the farmhouse. It's not done yet. I'm actually freezing cold right now. I'm in the farmhouse. And it's snowing outside, and my feet are ice cubes because the floor has no insulation. So we'll get to that. We, realized that, the CBD market was just totally flooded, but this incredible plant that we're growing here, we couldn't even pull it out of the ground and bring it somewhere to process. We were using hemp from France to grow or to use for our hempcrete work. And I'm growing it. I could look out the window while we're using fiber hemp from France and see my own growing in the fields, knowing that we wouldn't be able to harvest that and create a product that would be usable. So I set out with All Together Now and with all the people that I've met along the way to build a nationwide industry, but build it locally. You're all familiar with the term, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? For us, it was, what comes first, the hemp or the hemp sock. And this means really, how are we able to get a product made from hemp if there is no product existing, if there's no farmers that can grow it, if there's no processors that can process it, and then obviously there's no hemp socks that you can wear. So that's the dilemma. How do you create a local business supply chain when there's no supply chain? There's no supply and there's no business. Limited farmers, no processors, and of course, no end products. So enter education programs, investment, and innovation. And for our education, we did a Hempcrete Week so that we could explain to people, look, this is a product that you can use. For investment, we're going to All Together Now to try and reach out to people that are interested, that are contacting the All Together Now organization and connecting entrepreneurs with potential investors or buyers or, just end users. And innovation, and there's Ron. I really love this part. Right, hold on a second. Yeah, there he goes. He spins out of there. So using Ron for the innovation piece, we went to Thomas Jefferson University to meet with Ron and had an eye-opening experience for me, just to understand the possibilities that you can, for hemp, what you can actually do with hemp, just amongst other things. My favorite word, nano-spun hemp. But and then we had OpCana, which was canceled because of the COVID, but we were planning a sustainable hemp fiber conference here in East Stroudsburg, right in Delaware Water Gap on the river. As well as innovation, I started Trilogy, which is a hemp milk company. It's just it was the easiest option for me, because without processors and without a bunch of people growing hemp, what can you really do? So working with the United States or the USDA on grants, working with our local university, and trying to figure out how we're going to get money for what I think is the low-hanging fruit of the hemp industry, which is the seeds. So the reason that the seeds are so easy, and I feel like the seeds are the low-hanging fruit in the hemp industry, is because you can grow hemp and pretty much do nothing to it, fiber hemp that is, and you'll have a massive amount of seed per acre. Actually 800 seeds per acre. And we have the infrastructure in the United States to handle grain. So we don't have the equipment that's out there that we're able to cut it down, bring it to the processor, extract the fiber off the stalk, extract the hurd for building, and then take the seed. But we can take the seed and then bale the rest and figure out what we're going to do with it later. So for my local attack on the hemp market, I decided we're going to go with hemp milk, something that I can do all at my farm. I can grow the hemp and I can harvest it. I can get the grains, or I can go to people that I've met at the in the hemp coalition and get the rest of the grains if we can't grow enough here on my farm. We're also going to mix flax and oats so that we can get into a regenerative organic farming schedule. And it's been interesting, but we're getting there. The other way, like we said, to kind of work on the local community and start from the build from the ground up, we've been doing workshops. This was a hempcrete workshop. We're also doing a hemp milk workshop next month. I've been scheduling open farms to bring people in so they can understand what it is that we're doing here on the farm. Once the community gets involved, they feel like they have some ownership and investment in an incredible opportunity and in a regenerative organic business. We've been trying to represent the Pennsylvania hemp industry. I reached out to Eric Herlock from Lancaster Farmer, and he wrote a great piece on our Hempcrete Week. I think Eric's in the room right now. Thank you, Eric. Something that I suggest for everybody that they're interested in becoming a part of the local business supply chain with hemp is just reach out. Tell everybody you can possibly tell what it is that you're doing, and bring people into your farm, open it up. Contact the local press. We got the front page of the newspaper 2 years in a row. And this really helped me out because we needed hands to harvest. And this brought in about 45 part-time employees to help us harvest hemp. This is one of our hemp things there. Because I was in the paper so much, I was able to meet Governor Wolf to talk with him about hemp. Somebody had seen some of my articles in the local newspaper, and then it went out to Harrisburg, and then Harrisburg contacted me, and the next thing you know, I was able to meet with Governor Wolf and talk about the hemp industry. We've also diversified into produce so that we can not just offer hemp on the property, but we can supply people with great food. This is just a quick video. This is one of our open hemp farm days. You can see we had over 100 people there the one day. It was definitely the Kickstarter for our business here. Walk down the street now and people say that's the hemp guy, which is exciting. People are just dying for something to do, and the fact that we can give them something that is healthy, regenerative, organic, and wholesome. The bottom one is one of our hempcrete workshops. That's Cameron in the background there, watching somebody blow hemp into the hemp into the cavities of the wall. That's going to be a hemp insulator, that hemp fiber. That's me in the background filming. And on the top is Judy hosting one of our education meetings at the Hempstead. Yeah, this world has room for everyone. That's me and Margot, and me and Cameron at the Mountaindale Farm. That's Cam working on our hemp cottage. My mom's going to be moving up to the farm to live there. It's a whole bunch of hemp, and that should be it. I think I may have talked too long. I apologize, guys. But anyway, the goal here is that we're building this from the ground up, and I encourage everybody to ask any questions that they have about how we got to where we are, and looking forward to many more years and building this industry.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. Good, a really good example of what it's like to be in the industry. So I really appreciate that. Let me get back over to our slide here and just remind everybody again that please put your questions in the chat for Eric too. And after Peggy's presentation, we will be able to start answering questions as a community. So let me introduce our fourth speaker. Peggy's Executive Director of the Keystone Development Center, KDC. She oversees KDC's funding plan, finances, operations, systems, projects, clients, and her KDC team. She's been employed by KDC since 2005 and has served as the Executive Director since 2014. Her strengths as a cooperative development practitioner include feasibility and business planning, as well as creating and analyzing financial pro formas, including multi-year revenue models. Peggy's worked as the owner-operator of her own organic produce farm also, and as an extension educator with Penn State in the agricultural economic development, and is the program coordinator for Penn State's farm food safety program. So just like Judy and Eric, Peggy doesn't have any free time because she's got about 8 jobs. Peggy's a graduate of the University of Arizona, where she did her master's in family and consumer science, and Rutgers, where she did her bachelor's in anthropology and urban studies. So Peggy's going to talk to us a little bit next, and I will stop sharing, Peggy, and let you take over the screen.
Okay, let's see from the beginning. Hello, everybody. Let's see, why did this not start? Okay.
You'll have to swap screens at the very top there. Swap this, see when it says, yeah, display swap. Yep. Perfect.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, so no, I don't have all those jobs right now. That was my history. So in fact, let me just say that when I first started farming, which was in 1999, we started a CSA organic produce farm, one of the first CSAs in Pennsylvania. And we connected with Judy Wicks. We were delivering to the White Dog Cafe. And so I have quite a history with Judy, and it's nice to be back doing some work together. Our farm was, it was difficult for us to do this alone, have the CSA, and do everything from marketing, growing, distribution, the whole aspect of it. And eventually we decided that we'd be better off forming a cooperative business. And so we got together with Keystone Development Center and started working with them in 2005 to develop a group of farmers into a cooperative business. And that's the work that Keystone Development Center does. At that time, Cheryl Cook, who's the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, was the first person I connected with. So she was with Keystone Development Center in the beginning. And KDC started with a whole bunch of agricultural organizations that support KDC, including the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture and PASA, and Penn State Extension, and several organizations. There are cooperative development centers all over the country, about 30, and we are financed by the USDA. They have a particular grant to support cooperative business development. We've served over, it's probably 290 clients in various stages of development since 1999. And we provide education and as well as technical assistance. So looking back at the pieces that are needed to develop this industry, I think the technical assistance piece is probably another aspect that could be added to that chain of service providers. Certainly we would always need somebody who understands whatever industry that we're working with. So co-ops, the co-op business model can be used it is a business structure. It is not defined by any particular type of industry, but historically it was used most in the agricultural community. But people are probably familiar with food co-ops, electric utility co-ops, telecommunications, transportation, housing co-ops, home care, construction, education. There's all types of co-ops. These sectors utilize the co-op business model. So why choose this business model, and how do you define what business model to use? A business helps in all different ways. So you have to choose the right structure to meet your needs. So you might form a business for the production of commodities, or for manufacturing, distribution, business services, or a combination. And how you go about choosing is it defines who owns the business. It clarifies how decisions are made, organizes how earnings are distributed, and protects personal assets as well as tax implications. And all of these are based on the goals and objectives of the participants. It has to do with ownership, governance, financial risk and reward, and legal limitations of the various business sectors. So just to point out that the co-op model is indeed a legal form of business. You cannot use the word co-op unless you're legally formed in selecting that business entity. There's several avenues for how you can incorporate in Pennsylvania as a co-op. There is a particular one for agricultural co-ops. There's another one for worker co-ops. And then there's a general co-op business model, which are used by many. And so I'll talk a little bit about that business model and how it is defined. It isn't used as much in the US as it is in Europe. It's historically a European model that started, I think one of the first ones formed in England. But there's a lot of informal co-op business models. Essentially, the user is the owner. That's what defines a co-op. And the user has control, and the user is the beneficiary of the business. So what makes a co-op different than other types of businesses? They seek the economic benefit for its members. While the investor-owned business has the objective to make profits for its investors, cooperatives exist to meet members' needs economically and efficiently. So let's look at various types of co-ops. There's consumer co-ops, such as housing, electricity, credit unions, childcare, funeral services. There's producer co-ops. Farmers are most often the folks who use the co-op business model as producers, but there's craftspeople, artisans, worker co-ops, restaurant owners, taxi companies, timber processors, construction. There's a couple of really cool ones in Philadelphia that utilize the worker co-op model. This is probably the area where there's the biggest growth curve is, and it's different than employee ownership where you have stock. It's where you actually have business decision-making control, not just a stock. Purchasing and shared services. Lots of school districts and municipalities and independent business owners use the purchasing and shared services model. And then there's the multi-stakeholder for example, a taxi company that's owned by the mechanics, the drivers, and the dispatchers. There's all kinds of co-ops all over the world, and all different kinds of sizes. And the number of members are hugely diverse. So I could give you tons of really cool examples. You can see some examples on our website too of some of the co-ops that we work with. I'll describe a little bit about these cooperative principles that are held internationally. These are the components that make up a co-op. Its membership is voluntary and not discriminatory. It's a democratically controlled, where there's one member, one vote, as opposed to other businesses where somebody who has more stock gets higher voting rights. Everybody has equal power, one member, one vote. Members contribute to and democratically control and participate in the financing of a co-op. Cooperatives are independent self-help organizations. So for example, with a farmers co-op, which, just to mention that the farmers co-op that eventually started on our farm is now known as the Lancaster Farm Fresh Co-op, which is a fantastic co-op owned by about 100 farmers now. But each and every farmer in that co-op has their own independent business. They utilize the co-op to market and distribute their products, but they have independence in their own business. Cooperatives provide education on the principles and practices of co-ops and provide continuous education in leadership and financing and other kinds of business decisions. So it's very transparent. It allows for the growth and education of everybody within the co-op and a lot more sharing of information. And that's something that KDC provides ongoing support to co-ops within our network of continuing ongoing leadership and business development. Cooperatives work together at the local, regional, and national level. They help one another learn and share in resources so that they're not starting from scratch. They're much more willing to share information rather than see each other as competitors. And there's a concern for community, which is at the heart of the co-op business model. So what are the advantages of being a part of a co-op? Just showing here are some folks that I work with in New Jersey. These guys lease land underwater and raise clams. And they were selling to Weaver's Way. So these are some buyers from Weaver's Way Co-op who were purchasing from these farmers. And this was a very cold day, and this guy was in the water up to his neck at times, scraping the bottom of the bay to pull out clams. It's probably the hardest working group of people I've ever met. Amazing, amazing opportunity to meet all these people and see where they were. But the industry changed there, and they really needed one another. They used to be able to sell directly to customers, but regulations made it very difficult around food safety, and they needed one another to be able to continue to sell to their clients. So it improved their market power. It reduced costs. It improved their purchasing power. They went together and they bought a van. They bought equipment to process and sort their clams. They got a label. They got a website. They worked together. They had full control over their business decisions, and it improved their quality and productivity and overall their income. They have since really struggled. So just to say, it doesn't always work out, but they continue to work at a much smaller scale than they had hoped. but it was a fantastic learning experience and really helped these guys through some tough times. And we brought down folks from Philadelphia, various different restaurant owners and buyers to meet with them. And so we're seeing some growers here and some buyers here, and an educator from Rutgers, a marine biologist. So it takes a community of people to change an economy. Everybody had to work together to make this happen. There was a shared conviction that being a co-op was the appropriate form of business for these folks. They had a mutual need, and they realized that working together was going to serve that mutual need rather than see themselves as competitors. It brought out the talents and energy of everybody within the group, and they figured out somebody had a facility, somebody had more time for driving, somebody else had a much more gregarious personality for getting the product out to the customer through sales. They became a tight-knit group of people, and we helped them through providing guidance on the cooperative business model. We brought in lawyers, accountants, marketing people to help support the development. This is just one example, and we do this with many, many different industries. I knew nothing about clams, nor do I know anything about taxi or grass-fed beef or any of the industries that we work with, home care. So we always team together with a bunch of professionals who know the industry and can provide the kind of support they need. So how are co-ops structured? They're complex. You need articles and bylaws and membership agreements, and we help provide those kinds of guidance documents and the legal framework. And we help form the leadership team and help the steering committee or the group of initial stakeholders eventually form a board of directors and learn about the management and decision making that they have to do in their own business. We help them understand what their liability is, how to invest, how to build capital. The taxes are passed on to the shareholders, so the co-op itself is not taxed, so there's no double taxation. And the existence is tied to its members. Although you can have a transition from generation to generation of new people stepping in, other people leaving, the co-op model also allows for continuous growth. So new members and new owners can come into the business without a lot of complex changes to your organizational documents. The capital is raised by direct contributions, retained earnings, or borrowing. So retained earnings are like holding 10 cents for every case that's sold is a way to build up some capital. So the cooperative development happens by identifying that there's a need and agreeing upon a mission. We help do some feasibility work, and certainly would love to, if it was with hemp, work with Ron and his group in finding those kinds of resources that already exist, bringing in the professional team of people who are working, and develop a business plan.
Peggy, we need to wrap up soon so that we have a little bit of time for questions.
Sure. We help develop the leadership, the capitalization, and the management. We form a steering committee, and we help them analyze the feasibility and oversee the incorporation process, developing bylaws and all the legal framework. So our website describes all the different stages of the co-op business model. We have a pretty good educational set of resources on our website, but these are the kinds of components of things that we provide. So that's it. Thank you, everybody. And follow up with www.kdc.coop if you want to learn more about it. You can find my business card in the directory.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peggy. That was nice. Wow. So we had an amazing group here. You can see we put together a really interesting panel that had a ton of different backgrounds. Many of the panelists have been answering questions in the chat, so that's great. Some of them have already been answered. There's one here for Peggy that hasn't been answered yet, so I'll start there. The question was, where do agricultural co-ops get their funding, Peggy?
So we get funded by the USDA, and so we can provide that technical assistance, and as well as PDA. So we get a lot of support. There are pieces sometimes that we have clients pay for, but most of our services are pro bono.
Excellent. That's good. Thank you. Couple other questions that have come up, not in the chat, but as we were going along. Let me ask Judy this question. The impact of the pandemic on local supply chains and the social justice component of local supply chains. It's a two sides of a coin here. So on the one side, a local supply chain allows you to be lean in your manufacturing and in your business model. But on the other side, you sacrifice some resilience because you may only have local suppliers. So we've seen that in the pandemic, if a certain region of the country is shut down, if that was the only region you could get materials from, you might suffer as a business. So that suggests more distributed supply chains so that you have redundancy. How does the pandemic impact the local supply chain concept?
Well, I think we can look at what just happened during the pandemic with local food as an example, that the industrial centralized food system failed us during the pandemic, and food was being discarded. It couldn't get to households. Meanwhile, the grocery shelves in many of the cities were empty. So at the same time, our regional food system rose to the occasion. And farmers who had been selling to restaurants pivoted, and through social media were able to reach out to households. I know a farm that actually 100% of their business was to restaurants, and all of a sudden 100% of their business is to households, and their income did not decline. They had to work harder in having multiple clients of individual households compared to a few big restaurants, but their income remained steady. So I think that really proved the case, of how these small supply chains can pivot, can recreate. When you have these big supply chains, it's very hard to pivot. That's just been proven. So I think there's more resilience, more creativity in the small to small direct relationships between farmers and consumers. Another example in our Pennsylvania Grain Coalition, a retail store that's part of our coalition was not able to get King Arthur's flour, a worker cooperative up in New England, because it was in such demand. So he looked at our PA Grain Coalition, found a local grain farmer in Miller, and drove out to the rural area and picked up many pounds of flour to sell in his store. That during the pandemic, that was the local came to the rescue.
Right.
Now, so I would say that's a proven case here. Now I'm sure. What if Pennsylvania got, I don't know, suddenly some kind of a catastrophe? I don't know exactly why it would hit us more than. We're in a pretty good shape for for climate change in terms of fires, hurricanes, floods, and whatnot. But anyway, I feel more secure knowing that my basic needs are coming from my state than I do if I thought they were coming, I was dependent on California or Florida or, you know, South America or something.
Right.
I think that's pretty clear.
That's excellent. Thank you. Good answer. Good answer. Everyone here for Eric. You were talking about how you got into the business and the people that you met and how that influenced you getting into the business. Could you comment on, it seems to me, because I'm relatively new to it too, that this industry seems uniquely driven by relationships rather than sort of contracts and corporate stuff. Could you comment on that? Is that unique to this industry, or do you feel like that's just the way you experienced it? What's your thought about that, using relationships as a way to build your supply chain, so to speak?
I can say that I would be nowhere without my relationships that I created via All Together Now. That has, it invigorated me to do more, but it also enabled me to reach out. And I knew the people on a name-to-name basis. Like we were working together, trying to figure out how to build this industry, became friends. And then those same friends and colleagues became the people that helped me develop my business further and shift from CBD to fiber. And even on the produce side, I was friends now with farmers, so I could say, guys, help me out with this, and what did you do here, and how does your CSA work? And it's been everything, and I believe in that fully. This is the community that we're trying to create, and we will succeed with our community.
Excellent. That's really good. In the chat, I'll just point to some things that have already been answered, but Peggy put up a link for how you might find cooperative development centers in other states around the country. She said there's about 30 of those, and she posted the link in the chat. So if you're interested in that, look in the chat and grab it, or do a quick screenshot if you want to get that. Also noticed that Eric commented to one person that it might be important for others to understand that the insulation that is installed wet, the hempcrete insulation, and it's mixed with lime and water and blown in. And then he also mentioned that Cameron can get building grade material. So it might be good, Eric, if you maybe could type in the website for Cameron so that people can see it. That'd be a good idea. So those all got answered in the chat, but I just wanted to make sure others heard about that too. Peggy, this might be a good question for you. Since this industry didn't really exist in very big amounts in the US for the last 60, 70, 80 years, but it had around the world, how do you see bootstrapping the supply chain? Eric made some mention of this in his slides about the fact that, the farmers aren't going to grow if there isn't a processor. The processor isn't going to process unless there's a market. There's no market if people aren't growing. How do the business models you're talking about help with that bootstrap process?
Why did you choose to give me the most difficult question?
Oh, I don't know. Well, the other two paid me $20 not to ask them that question. They
money well spent.
Yeah, they sent me Bitcoin over my phone.
So I think it's based on need. And also cooperation. So where there's a need, and of course there's innovation. So what do we need? What do we need that comes out of this? Everybody needs to insulate their house once in a while, or they need milk or clothing. I think a big part of the problem is there might be these many examples available, but they become prohibitive. I really like what's happening with All Together now because they see it tied to the need for employment, for business ownership. And if that can happen, to be able to build jobs, to be able to provide opportunities for people to own their own business, to provide opportunities for people to use their creative spirit to build something or create something and make a living. is really inspirational. And farmers want to grow, and they want to grow a product that has a market. There's need everywhere in the chain. It's just a matter of investing. And I feel that there is an interest in investing. There's an interest in investing for USDA. And then, of course, there's the environmental need. PDA is really behind this. I think there's a lot in the right path, and it's been growing. We've been hearing from farmers for years, and little bits here and there, but that momentum is growing. It's snowballing, and all the pieces are coming together because there's these different elements. And if they can work together, collaborate, share resources, and recognize the need for one another for it to move forward.
Sure. Thank you. That's a good answer. Even for a tough question, that was a good answer. There's a question here to Eric, but I'm going to start with it myself and then hand it over to Eric. But the question was, why did he transition from CBD to fiber? Was it income or interest? I can say before I hand it over to Eric that in talking to potential investors, when they come and ask questions at the university, most people who do an economic analysis see the lowest risk long-term money in fiber related applications more so than in CBD related applications. One thing is volume too, because I think I saw some calculations once about the number of acres of hemp you'd have to grow to satisfy the US market for CBD oil. And it's not a huge number. So it's not as scalable as a business as fiber is, whereas fiber could be orders of magnitude more acres and still satisfy a bunch of applications. So I think independent of the legislation and the risk associated with laws, just the scalability argument when investors look at it, because the way you invest in a business is you grow it and either have an exit strategy or what, but there really isn't as much of that in the CBD space as there is in the fiber space from what I've seen. But Eric, why did you do it personally?
So specifically, there is a woman on Instagram. She's an MIT graduate genius, and I've been following her. Her name is Shatter Girl Jacqueline. She was making shatter, which is basically a type of, it's cannabis made into a resin type of a thing that you smoke the shatter. But she was using some proprietary methods to do this. She switched over to hemp when the hemp industry exploded, and she did her own calculation and posted on Instagram early in 2019. And she said specifically, "I'm really sorry to tell everybody this, but I've just done my estimations, and it will probably require 1,000 acres of hemp grown in the United States to supply every living person in the United States with the recommended daily intake of CBD, 25 milligrams. She said, that information alone is enough for me to say, we have a problem. And I started talking with people about it, and they said, oh, well, that doesn't count the smokables, and that doesn't count this. And I said, doesn't matter. It's every person has to take 25 milligrams a day, and we only need 100,000 acres. We're already at 200,000. We're in trouble here. So my reason for switching, and I grew fiber. I grew CBD hemp this year on the same farm, which is a no-no, but I did it, and I did it successfully without seeds. But I just had a feeling that there was going to be a glut, and I also wasn't really into that market. I didn't want to package things and put everything in plastic and sell the smoke. I was more interested in the farming aspect and the community aspect. So we're still selling CBD, but I really felt like the fiber had, and there was no waste. That was the other thing. In the fiber market, you're using every single part of the plant. So that it just seemed like a no-brainer to me.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're running out of time very rapidly here. We have about 3 or 4 minutes before I have to wrap up the session. Let me ask the panelists, is there any question you want to ask each other, or anything that you haven't had a chance to point out based on the discussion we've had for the last 15 or 20 minutes? Oh, I see Cameron McIntosh has his hand raised. Cameron, do you want to unmute and ask a question?
That was a mistake, but great panel, guys. I really appreciate it. Wonderful information, and happy to see my colleagues here doing great work. So cheers, everyone.
Cool. Yeah, you just wanted me to say your name. I know. That's why
I just wanted to hear you say my name too, Ron.
Yeah, that's it. I know. That's good. So let me share my screen one more time here. I have a little bit of cleanup work to do here. Excellent. So thank you to the panelists and to the 33 people that were online with us here today, listening to the conversation. There's a question in the excuse me, joke there. There's a question in the chat box about regulatory barriers for using hemp fiber for bedding if a crop is hot or contaminated. Maybe somebody could type an answer in there, because that could be a long conversation. Excuse me, choke there. Let me thank, since we have about a minute or two, I want to thank the speakers again. This was an amazing discussion. I know all of you, and I knew it would be an amazing discussion, but I'm really impressed by the time and thought you put into what you presented today. And it really, I appreciate the time spent with you guys, and I'm sure the conference is very happy with the quality of your presentations, and I appreciate that. I also want to have the audience give a virtual round of applause to our speakers, please. You can hit the little clap icon in your responses there, or type a thank you into the chat box for these folks, because I'm sure they appreciate it. They didn't get to hear your applause, but I'm sure you're applauding in your living rooms or bedrooms or wherever you're Zooming from. I do want to take a moment and oblige the sponsors that were made this thing possible for us. Our top level sponsors and partners for this year's Pennsylvania Hemp Summit were Lancaster Farming, King's Agri-Seeds, PA Agriculture Business Development Center, and Air Products. Those were the lead sponsors, but you see the other ones here on the splash slide. And in the session survey, please fill out the survey for this session. That's important for us to get feedback. And please make sure you do your e-business card and network with folks, because the networking, I think, is some of the most important things that can happen in this conference. Next up, there's a lunch break, and there's a Meet the Sponsors and networking event, so you can go in there and get your e-cards exchanged with folks. And then after that, you'll see there's a Navigating Rules and Regulations session, which is an update from federal and state leaders about the situation with the laws. And that might be a great place to get that regulatory question answered, Karen, about the barriers to bedding if the crop is hot or contaminated. So that's an excellent answer. And I see Eric put an answer up in here for that too. So it's time for me to close the session. So I want to thank everybody, and please attend the other sessions for the day. And thanks to Eric, Judy, and Peggy for all of your help today. I appreciate it. So I will call the session closed. Thank you all.